Welcome to From Heartache to Healing and Hope with your host, Bernadette Winters Bell, LMSW. This podcast explores the many layers of life through the lens of loss and grief, often with special guests who share their perspectives on this universal yet unique process. These explorations can offer you, the listener, avenues to encourage you to have these conversations with yourself, your family, your community, your world.
Hello, I'm Bernadette Winters Bell, the host of the podcast From Heartache to Healing and Hope. Wait till you hear from today's guest, Suzanne Summers. She's a retired registered nurse. She's a Reiki Master and a shamanic practitioner. So much I learned about this energy work and how it is real, thousands of years old, not voodoo, but really something that could be interesting just to learn for many people. Come and join us on From Heartache to Healing and Hope. See you soon. Hello, this is Bernadette Winters Bell and my podcast, From Heartache to Healing and Hope. And what an interesting guest I have for all of you in the audience today. Today, I'm introducing you to Suzanne Summers, who has such an interesting background. Suzanne, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Bernadette. Thank you very much. Hello, Beatrice. Glad to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. And since you know yourself, well, better than anyone else, would you be so kind as to introduce yourself to my audience?
Yes, thank you. I'm Suzanne Summers. I have a Reiki practice currently. I'm a Reiki Master Teacher for the past 20 some years. I'm also a shamanic practitioner. I trained for that with Michael Harner's Foundation of Shamanic Studies, and it involved 3 years of intensive training when we met in the old days when we could meet together. We met for 3 years every 6 months. And that was thanks to Michael Harner, it was a concentration of shamanic practices that he had discovered from all over the world, from different indigenous people. Wow. I'm also a dedicated bird watcher and a mother of 3 sons and a retired registered nurse.
There you go. Quite a history resume here. So let me ask a question. What brought you to want to train become a Reiki master and then as a shamanic practitioner?
My interest in Reiki was sparked by a desire to do some kind of healing help primarily for animals at the beginning. And I was talking to a woman in a local store. We were standing in line at the cash register. She was telling me that she practiced Reiki and treated her dairy cows, and that she had learned from a woman in Binghamton who had an active practice of sending Reiki to horses all over the world. So that definitely interested me. And the next day I saw a poster for a Reiki class. So I immediately signed up, and that was the beginning of a wonderful course of study over years with my teacher, who was local, fortunately for me.
Wow. So for people who are perhaps unfamiliar with Reiki, what is the voodoo that you do so well, as some people might think of it. So what actually is it?
It is thought to be voodoo by many people.
Mhm.
It is not voodoo. It's an energy work,
Mhm.
an energy practice. Reiki is, the word is a Japanese word. If you take it apart into the two syllables, rei and ki, it translates to universally guided life force energy.
Wow.
And some people will recognize the second syllable, ki, as relating to chi,
Mhm.
which may be more familiar with people here in this country. So the belief is that Reiki energy is all around us at all times. And when you become a practitioner, your energy centers or chakras are opened up. So you become a channel for this Reiki energy. And it has its own inherent wisdom, so that it goes to where it's needed the most, whether it is a physical issue, a mental issue, or emotional issue. As the practitioner, I don't need to know what a client needs, because the Reiki will go where it's needed the most.
That's fascinating. So it's energy work that you're moving energy around in the body. Are you like rubbing bellies, or how does that happen?
It's not so much moving energy as directing it.
Mm.
It is hands-on healing, which is of course mentioned in the Bible, and that does seem to help people accept it more readily.
Right.
There are energy centers, for example, in the palms of your hand. So when you put hands on another person or around a pot of flowers or on an animal, the Reiki energy flows through your hands into the recipient. And as I said, I don't need to know
Right.
what the greatest need is. The Reiki will go where it's needed and do its work.
Fascinating. So what I'm hearing is that different cultures might have different names for energy or healing,
Right, right.
but could be similar.
It's very similar, and that's exactly what we learned in the shamanic studies, is
Mhm.
that from practices of indigenous people all over the world who never ever could have been in contact with each other to share their ideas and their beliefs, their practices had incredible similarities.
Okay, right.
So yes, as you say, their energy work has different names from different cultures, but it's actually it's simple but incredibly powerful.
And what brought you to the shamanic work?
Well, one very practical thing was that my local teacher, uh, switched her concentration from Reiki to shamanic work. But more personally, for my story, I realized when working with her that um, shamanic work has a deep foundation in nature.
Mm.
And despite having some vague interest in various religions, I've never found a belief system that grabbed me until I studied shamanic practices. It's not a religion, but it provides an incredible connection to the world of spirit.
Wow. So for people that are hearing this, and shamanic may sound more voodoo than Reiki did, how would you describe how it's done, or why it's done, or when it's done?
Shaman, a shamanic practitioner, which is what I am. I mean, unless I had been brought up in a culture of shamanism, there's no way I could call myself a shaman. But for brevity's sake, a shaman always works with the spirits. And once again, the shaman is a connection between the plane where the spirits reside and this plane where we reside. And shamans can act as the intermediaries to answer questions, to help heal illnesses, to alleviate pain, to help find the keys.
The literal keys, or the keys to the problem?
Both.
Oh, okay.
To find your car keys. We can work with the weather spirits to enhance or alter the weather.
Oh, well, let me stop you right there. So it's snowing pretty hard outside right now.
It is.
It is. And my husband has to come back from the Binghamton area at about 5:30. So if you could get the weather good for around then, I'd be very, very appreciative.
5:30. Okay. Okay. You got it.
So I'm sure it's not as simple as that, of course. Wow.
It's very simple. It's very simple.
Really? You know, we've heard of shamans, say, in different continents, Africa or South America. And the shaman that you studied with, and he was located where?
My training took place in Virginia at a retreat. The woman who was the primary teacher actually lives in Massachusetts. One of the participants arranged a trip to Mongolia to work with the shamans there, and I went on that trip. We did work with 3 actually very young men who were shamans. In Mongolia, the tradition is that the ability to do shamanic work comes through the mothers, the grandmothers. But in their families, there were no girls, there were no females, so the sons were trained. And so there were 12 of us who went, and we learned, we all learned from each other. They learned quite a bit from us, and vice versa.
Interesting that normally it's more matriarchal.
Yeah.
To go down. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
When I was thinking of the ones in Africa and such, I was thinking males. Very interesting. It's
often in indigenous cultures, a shaman could be either male or female. If a designated shaman did not produce results that the people liked, they were sometimes killed. And the testing that went on, the trials that one had to pass to be declared a village's shaman were rigorous.
Wow. And they're not fooling around.
Right. And there was a position of huge importance.
Yes, that I've always understood. Just amazing. So how in our modern world do you integrate being a shamanic practitioner?
I have a daily practice of honoring the earth spirits, the 7 directions. This is something I do every morning. First thing, the 7 directions are the north, east, south, and west, above, below, and within. And since the pandemic, I've been doing that every day. And I have found that it has made me much calmer. I've been able to reduce the amount of anxiety surrounding all the unknowns of life in a pandemic.
Right.
And I believe that it's been a huge help, and I think the benefits, I still haven't realized all of them. I can also work at a distance for clients who have maybe a specific disease or who want to find their helping spirit, or they're also known as a power animal.
Mm-hmm.
And once that being is found, let's say you have a bear as a power animal, you can ask for its help in any issue that you're having. Because these spirits are living on a different plane, in a different reality, they need to be asked, or else they can't help. And that's pretty much a key function of shamanic practices. You have to ask for help. And then the next piece is to thank them. So it's very important. Your gratitude, very important. Keep up a good connection.
So they're not just reading your mind and doing what you need, right?
Unfortunately, no. It's simple, but it's not that simple.
So does everyone have a power animal?
Everyone does. Every animal, any living being has a power animal or a helping spirit. I have 6, 8 power animals myself. Sometimes one will leave for a time. I remember early on, I had a snowy owl as my the first power animal that I had a wonderful connection with. And I remember in a class, it disappeared. I saw it flying away, and it was heartbreaking because I was so close to it. And it turns out that the one that came to replace the owl was a cobra. And what the interpretation was that I needed to be more grounded. And so I got a being that lives on the ground, moves on the ground, instead of one that could fly and take off and be light and airy. And then later on, the owl came back. So.
Oh, when you were grounded enough and could deal with them.
Yeah.
You know, that reminds me of people that come into our lives or situations, you know, and some come in for a reason or a season, and there's a whole saying like that. But people come into our lives, we don't know it, maybe initially, for a particular reason, for us to help them or them to help us. And then they may leave because that's finished. And it might be heartbreaking, like you said, that they go, but the purpose it was meant for was served.
Right, exactly.
So I think part of the struggle then is to be grateful for when they were there.
Mhm.
Of course, you're going to miss them, and then be thankful that you had them in your life when they did, and they might even come back, as opposed
Right.
to grieving their loss. And
Right. Yes. Mhm.
grieving is what I do. So this I got.
Yes. Right.
Wow, this is pretty absolutely fascinating. So how do you find that people, when you start to talk, do you start to talk about it with people? Or are you very selective of who you talk to about it?
Well, in the pandemic, there's not too much chatter going on. I talk to my fellow practitioners on the phone. I became very close friends with several of them,
Mm-hmm.
so we can talk amongst ourselves. It's somewhat of a specialized interest. So, at the grocery store, not too many people say to me, "Oh, I heard you're a shamanic practitioner. Would you help me find my power animal?" I mean, I would love it if that happened, but
But
the
generally, you don't
topic,
meet them in the produce aisle to find the power animal.
right, right,
Right. And also, I can imagine that some people would think that that's hooey and not give
yes.
it a lot of weight.
However, I think during this pandemic, people have had more time to be introspective, and they are more interested in energy work.
Mhm.
And some of my colleagues have found that distant work with clients works as well as, or sometimes better than, in-person work. I'm not sure why it might be that powerful, but that's what they've found. And with both Reiki and shamanic practices, because they involve energy, there's no physical boundaries that come up. Like, I could send a Reiki treatment to my son in California, um, with very simply, or I could search for a power animal for someone who's like lives at the north end of the lake.
Mhm.
And also it can be sent ahead, especially Reiki can be sent ahead, so that if you have a dentist appointment, that's my favorite example. If you have a dentist appointment coming up next Thursday at 1 o'clock, Reiki energy can be sent ahead, so it sits there and waits like a little battery
Wow.
until 1 o'clock. And when you arrive, boom, you have all this wonderful energetic help to get you through the dentist appointment.
I just love it. I'm thinking that um, in thinking of, say, prayer as energy going out there, and people are more accepting and familiar with prayer,
Uh-huh.
because prayer may be to what they see as a god or another entity or to a saint. But in essence, it's a message going from their heart, their spirit, to someone else's. And that's
Right.
the energy taking it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So it doesn't sound so strange when it's put into that context, because it is all energy,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know? I say
And
to people that, does love exist? Yeah, sure. And guilt exist, or, a couple of different examples. And then I'll say, okay, you can show me this teacup. Okay, show me love. Not an example of love, not one of these, but love, which you can't do.
right.
But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, because you already know it exists.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that emotion with the energy it's charged with can be sent to different places. Yeah, it becomes more familiar perhaps for people when hearing
Right.
that,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow, how interesting. I love that it can be sent ahead. You could
Yeah.
you could have a calendar and send it all out.
Yeah. And you
Right days.
also send it behind, send it back to the past to heal episodes, events, relationships in the past. Mm-hmm. The key thing is your intention.
So is that similar to if a person is thinking about a difficult situation that was in the past and they decide to forgive, in other words, let go of it, not hold on to it in their heart?
Mm-hmm.
Is that similar to Reiki energy or shamanic energy going in the past to heal it?
Sure. Yeah, this practice would help concentrate that intention.
Got it.
Yeah.
I'm loving this. I remember, I believe it was you, we were talking about that I have about, I don't know, 7 or 8, they're not power animals. I don't know, I think of them as guardians.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the actual term is. But it did help me to understand why when I walk in a room, I know I have a presence. Well, now I know I'm walking in with my posse, so no wonder I have a presence, you know. But when you said that I could send it ahead, like I could send somebody, not somebody specific, ahead to like make the environment at home calmer, say.
Yes.
I was like, wow, this is great stuff. I never thought of that particular thing, right?
Yeah.
So are those my spirit guides?
Well, could be. I mean, it's sort of a linguistic issue. They're your spirit guides. They're your power animals. They're your compassionate helping spirits. Whatever term you prefer.
Oh, okay. All right. It's all the same. Okay.
Yes. Right. Mm-hmm.
How fascinating is this? And I do think, you know, I often ask people how they're doing during the pandemic, but you've already explained how this evolved into maybe a higher level practice that people are able to receive more. Now, do people need to know that you're sending them these kinds of energies ahead of time?
It helps if the recipient is in a relaxed state.
Okay. Right.
To sit quietly, lay down, do nothing else, not be watching television or on their phone. That helps to concentrate what they're receiving, but it's not a requirement.
Right.
What is a requirement is that the practitioner has permission to do that. I can't say, oh, I know Mrs. X is sick, and decide that I'm going to send her energy I can't do that unless I have her permission. The difference is when you work without permission, that's the voodoo.
Oh, that makes so much sense, because it's like giving someone advice that they didn't ask for it and don't necessarily want it. So you, even if you're coming from a good place, and the same with you, you're not going to send the energies if they're not aware and have accepted it.
Right.
And I love how that honors the humanity of each person to say, if you accept this and want this, then this I can give to you.
Yeah.
Not just you're going to get it and it's going to help you, and I don't care if you want it or not.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's absolutely terrific. So where do you go from here with this? Are there different levels to achieve, or?
I would like to be able to travel to north of Mongolia. There are people called the Sami, S-A-M-I. that where for the only area in the world, shamanism is their national, let's say, religion.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in Mongolia, one of our interpreters, who was Mongolian herself, said to me, you have Sami origins. She said the shape of your nose, your forehead, your general build, it's pure Sami. I had never heard of Sami before.
No, if you were Irish or German,
right.
or Italian,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So those folks, before they lose their indigenous practices, before they disappear from the face of the earth, I would love to get there and study with them.
Wonderful.
Or there are plenty of places, the Native Americans in the Southwest are very powerful practitioners. There's lots to learn, and I've just started to scratch the surface, really.
I love it. I can see the joy of the work and the excitement to think of what else there is to learn or experience or all of that. Right.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So what gives you hope for the future?
Of
course, I'm assuming you have hope.
I do have some hope, yes. What thrills me is to see the ease with which my grandson, who is now 7, has taken to mystical practices like drumming, his belief in the invisible world. He is a strong believer in fairies, and he has a sister now who is 3, and he'll make sure that she knows what he knows. And the ease with which he takes to this gives me a lot of hope.
Lovely. Oh, I just love that. Yeah. Children are always the future. So if someone wanted to receive a treatment or to speak with you about this, how would they get in touch with you?
Phone, text, email.
And your email is?
It's my name. It's Suzanne, Suzanne, Summers, SUMMERS @gmail.com.
Wonderful. Well, we'll make sure we get all that information when the podcast is launched, and make sure that it's available to people.
Thank you.
I want to thank you so much for coming on. This was so interesting. We could talk about this for hours. Of course, we could probably talk about anything.
We could. Yes,
wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for imparting information that I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't have, and for sharing your hope. Thank you for being a guest today on From Heartache to Healing and
You're
Hope.
welcome. Thank you.